Our next presentation, and we are very happy to learn more about Calhoun County flooding and insurance maps from Allie.
Well, before we get started for the main portion of the presentation, I want to get into some housekeeping first and then explain some things. So insurance companies use FEMA flood-based data maps. They do not use any other type of map except for FEMA maps. FEMA maps are based on historic floods or areas that have potential of flooding and all that, such as near an area of water, such as rivers, streams, or creeks. Insurance companies, if you get denied for flood insurance, or so, you can still get insurance, but you have to go to another company, and that can increase your rate. It can also make it higher and expensive. And if you are in an area and it changes from, let's say the FEMA flood map and all that the area was not a FEMA flood-based map and all that at that time, and it gets changed, it's too late. If your area has already been hit by flooding, due to you already had your policy made. So what I used instead of the FEMA flood-based maps, I create a hydrology flood index, which is based on soil, flow accumulation, natural land coverage database, and slope layer, which are all weighted in together. And because of these, you can see areas that can hold water retention that could cause an area to flood. Now, let's see if this will go. Let's get out here. I'm going to do another one then. I knew that was going to happen in case it did that. So instead, I'm going to do it like this. All right. So the reason why I got interested into the insurance flood data maps was because of my experience in 2019 and in 2015. 2015 to 2017, I was with the emergency management of Calhoun County, and I was with Michael Barton in 2015 when my area of Linlock Lane was flooded. After that, I had a peak interest in. I was also curious if the area was in a FEMA flood zone. In 2019, my parents, I was not living there at the time, but my parents were living still in Linlock Lane, and their house was totally flooded. And the neighbor had to be rescued by firefighters. So I'm going to show you the presentation of what happened that day, based on what happened. So it was early morning, the rain started, and it was in July of 2019. It was due to Hurricane Allie. The ditch started to overflow, and we also had water runoff from the hillside over here that also caused the area to overflow. We also had another water runoff that was right behind the Dollar General at the area. The same location that flooded in 2015 when I was with Michael Barton, director of the EMA. So here is the flood, or the hydrology index map that I created. And I'm going to also compare this to the area that flooded in 2019. If you can see. That the area, the flood hydrology map shows more, but these are areas that are potential of flooding. Right over here, you see is where the flood actually happened in 2019. So this was my neighbor's house in July. She was an 83-year-old woman, and her house was to have over 4 foot of water in it. She had to be rescued by firefighters, and she was in her house for over an hour banging on the door for help. This was my dad. When he was walking across, he was going to go help the neighbor, but he couldn't get over to help her because of the height of the water. Our house at the time was had around a foot of water in it, and they had to move out, and so did the neighbor, due to the molding that came later on because of this. Here is the hydrology index that I created using the layers, the slope, the flow accumulation, national land coverage. And we're going to compare this to the FEMA data. Right over here is the location of the flood zone. That's the FEMA data. As you can see, the location was not in a FEMA flood zone. My parents were not allowed to have flood insurance due to that. And if they were going to get in flood insurance, they would have had to go into another company, and that would have raised the price of the insurance. They wouldn't be unable to afford it. That's the hydrology index that I created using those layers. So next, we're also going to look at Coldwater Creek. In 2016, Coldwater Creek flooded over, and I witnessed it when I was going to my aunt and uncle's house. The road over here was flooded over, and I couldn't cross. I had to go the back way. The Dollar General also has some flooding damage to it as well. As you can see in the picture over here, there's the Dollar General. I also want to focus on the dangers and all that flooding can do to a bridge or to a roadway. It can cause drivers to be stranded and can wash their cars away and leading them to a death situation or to a hazard. It can also cause rust or erode to the bridge or the roadway. And it can cause damage in the future if flooding occurs more than multiple times over time. There's the hydrology index that I created using the layers. That's the flow line where Coldwater Creek and other bodies of water will meet into the creek. We're also going to compare this to the FEMA data. Something about the FEMA data in that year of 2016, that area was not a flood zone. After the event of 2016, FEMA decided to put 400 residential houses in this area into a flood zone, but it was too late for the residents of the area due to the flooding already happened. Therefore, people had to move out of their homes, or they had to get their homes rebuilt, so because of molding issues. So I'm going to also go to Chenoweth Park. In 2022, I was going to be going hiking the next day. And this was in March. It was very rainy that night, and I was not expecting the type of flooding on the roadways as it did. In the morning, there was not as much rain, but still the flooding is already happening from the flow lines coming off to Chenoweth State Park. over here is Cheehaw. And then you have the Choccolocca Creek flowing into the Choccolocca watershed. And this also creates the flood hazard that you see here. There's the hydrology index that I created. There is the FEMA map. FEMA map alone. Hydrology index at a closer view. Compare with the FEMA data. And here is the area of Choccolocca Park when it was flooded. The waterways was created in Blender, and I brought it in and I based it onto the actual levels of where the areas were flooded. And that's my presentation. Any questions? Wait.
I have a question about so it sounds like you can only get insurance if your household's in the FEMA designated thing. Is there any like retroactive kind of application? Like you said that I can't remember which one it was, but they weren't in the floodplain, but then later they were in the FEMA floodplain. Can you get retroactive insurance reimbursement, or is that not a thing?
It's not a thing. You would have to go into a debate. What you would have to get, what's it called? You have to propose, you have to go against and propose what's going on, and you have to basically have a debate, and they would take it to the state on it. And it's really a difficult thing, and a lot of people don't realize about flood insurance, they don't even ask. So that's the problem with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. What impact, if any, has the work that you've done had on potential resurveying and reclassifications of flood zones?
That's actually what I'm kind of hoping. I want to go to my PhD for this.
Yeah.
I want to get in emergency management, go to my PhD, and see changes in the flood zone maps for FEMA, or something to be added on to it because of their FEMA bases on historical data in areas that have flooded or areas that are close to water, like rivers or so. Not like a ditch, that's by my old house at Linlock.
Right.
But I'm wanting to see a lot of change into it because there's more than just my family that went through things and all.
And the second question I have is, the FEMA floodplain map clearly shows that this park was built in a floodplain. How is that possible?
Which one? The one in Coldwater Creek or
The
this one?
Choccolocca, the park that flooded.
See, what's so crazy, I was talking to a woman the other day, Birmingham, they, partial of the school was also built into a valley area to where the flow lines or so or the water runoff will run into that area, and they don't think when building, they don't think where they're building at and what can happen and all that in the future. They don't think about the future flooding. That's why I believe what happened here as well, especially they're right by the Choccolocca Creek. They're right next to the river and all that, and they created also a man-made lake that can also flow.
Right.
So my question is, when was the last FEMA map drawn?
A few years ago, just a few years ago too.
So, for instance, in Choccolocca Creek, you've had a tremendous amount of change in the watershed, so that's not gonna be captured in FEMA maps. And secondly, they used to be based off 100 and 500-year flood events, and I don't know if that's changed or not.
No,
But the problem with it is, and it's hard for FEMA to keep up, because when you change the flow paths, which have been done significantly in most areas, even if it's a ditch, the water doesn't move the same way as it did prior to ditching. And so I'm not sure if FEMA can pick that kind of information up.
Yeah.
So when they're running their models, what do they include in their models in order to determine that this floodplain? So I assume they do projections on what regions are going to be more at risk. And so when they're looking at their floodplain models, what do
only thing that I read that they include, because I'm trying to get my insurance license as well to understand more about the, interest in this, that they only look at areas that have flooded in the past, have potential of flooding, or have historic value of flooding, or areas near a body of water, like a large body of water, like a river, or areas that are in a low valley. They do not, versus mine, the hydrology index, mine is on soil type, because some soil types hold more water retention. Gosh, you also got roadways and all that, water can't seep on the roads, which is the NLCD, the National Land Coverage. Also slope, you have the incisions and all that, and the water runoff and all that, where water runoff will just go down into a area or a valley area. And yeah, mine's has much more gosh, layers than FEMA's. Kind of surprised actually.
Yeah, too.
Yes.
Just have a quick question on, you just brought up your model and how you set up your landforms. So I noticed on your pictures, the pixelations are kind of like your units of land. Was there what was the size that you were doing for your measurements? Is it like 1 meter square, 10 meter square?
It was 1 meter square.
1 meter square? It's pretty good resolution.
Did you look at change, I know I'm all up in your business.
No, you're good.
You're really interesting. Did you look at change through time? So those, I mean, there's a lot of land use change, particularly down around Chocolate
I did.
Park. Did you look at, I don't know if your models can look through time, but I'm curious, if you ran it 10 years back, would you get the same flood areas necessarily?
So you wouldn't, because once you do construction, so like this wasn't here, like certainly your Chocolate Park wasn't here, and you didn't have that much of a floodplain.
Yeah.
And I actually was able to go back on Esri's way back and see the changes of the land over around a 15 span time, and I was able to compare it. FEMA had the same results and all because they didn't change theirs. Mine, I was able to keep compare results and all from the slope and all, and pull that data.
This is actually really important. There's a huge Chocolate Creek study coming down the pipeline, and the results are gonna be released soon. So when we get those results, I think your data will fit really well into that.
I hope so. I hope that really.
That's very good.
Anyone else?
We're a little over time, so we're gonna have to call it here.